add value to your business, or do you want to just be this administrative person?
And often, if you look at your talent team and the caliber of talent in your company, they correlate.
You could hire the best person for the job if they were in your candidate pool.
All these individual employees, one by one, together, their voices all come together to articulate the culture of the company.
This is hiring.
Hiring on all cylinders.
Oh yeah, hello again, recruiters, directors of talent, sourcers, all manner of recruiting pros. Hiring on all cylinders takes to the airwaves once more. Rob Stevenson here at the helm, playing the role of facilitator / loudmouth, but not to fear, I am joined by our senior business recruiter, Amina Valuad Moinadine. Amina, how are you?
Great, how are you, Rob?
Spectacular, especially good. This episode, we'll get to that. I'm also joined by our fearless head of talent, Britt, Amina's boss, Ryan. Britt, how are you?
Doing great, Rob. Thanks.
This is, I'm particularly excited today because we have achieved a milestone. This is episode 100 of Hiring on All Cylinders. And as I'm sure some of you out there in podcast land know, most episodes are sponsored by Hendrick's Gin. But tonight, considering it is the most auspicious of occasions... What do we have here? Pierre Moncois. I don't think I'm saying that correctly, but so anyway, as I pour this champagne for the pod squad, I figured that I wanted it to be an Entelo special. It's a healthy pour. I guess I'll take that one. Or I don't know if you want it. I guess we gotta drink all of it. It's all gotta go.
We'll get through it in this episode.
Yeah, definitely. I figured I wanted to keep it as an Entelo special, considering it's an landmark episode, rather than have a guest in here and distract us from the two of you. So we have a lot to talk about.
There's cheers.
Cheers to the next 100 episodes. A lot going on here on the hiring side of things. Most recently, we have Referral Madness, which has been going on through multiple waves. Is that right?
Indeed.
So how do you start off this? Not just like we have a referral program, but an actual focused campaign to increase referrals. Where does that start? What are the benefits? I don't know. Can you just hammer on through all that?
Yeah. So I'm going to let Amina take this one because Referral Madness was born before I arrived at Entelo. So
okay.
Amina, maybe you can share with us sort of how it came to be.
Yeah. So we started Referral Madness probably a couple of months ago, and this was our first go at it. We had a lot of hires that we wanted to make on the sales side at this point of time, and we realized, okay, we have a great network of people. And we need to leverage it, but we want to make it a little bit of fun. We don't want just people to have to refer and go through our applicant tracking system and that's it. So Margaret, who's on our talent team, and I sat together and we thought about how we want to do this, and we made it a week-long exciting experience for the team. The first day we did a kickoff, and we had wine and cheese and crackers and different sort of sliders and food, and we had everybody in the company get together and think about their entire network and who they could refer. And what we really wanted to do is we didn't have a specific focus, although we were focusing on sales in terms of open roles. We wanted people to just look through their network and say, okay, we're going to make a sales, customer success, marketing, engineering, product, and talent list within Entelo. And every single person that you can think in your network who would be a good fit, just add them into the list, and talent will do everything else. And then we wanted to incentivize people. So we had daily draws. So as many times as you referred a person is as many times as your name would go in the draw. And at the end of each day, we would pick out a name and you'd win a $100 gift card to a great restaurant in San Francisco. And then if your referral would make it to on-site interview stage, so they're meeting a panel of interviewers, then they would get $500 in their next paycheck. And if they got hired, then they would get the referral bonus. So we wanted to make it fun, and we also wanted to incentivize people with fun prizes, and then also monetarily, in addition to if you get a hire, the fact that you're bringing in great people into the pipeline, you're also getting rewarded.
Definitely. And it goes a little further than just, so for this particular event, we had them add to a list, right? But when you think of referrals, you might not know who you know, I guess. Like, you might not know who's in your network. So is there this piece of it that's like showing them where to get the word out and like comb through their networks as opposed to just like off the top of their head who they might know?
Yep. So we sat down together. Margaret created a deck and really just walked through, okay, what does a referral mean? So to us, a referral is somebody that you know are getting engaged and are going to be an active part of the process. It's not just a name that you're putting in front of us. So even though people put names in a list, after we comb through it as a talent team, we would go then and ask, for example, Sydney referred a director of communications candidate. So I went back to Sydney and I said, hey, can you introduce me? So she introduced me to her. She chatted with her, brought her in for coffee, and had her engaged. So it's not just a lead. What we also did was we created different Boolean strings so that they can search through their LinkedIn. I created different profiles for the open roles that we did have so that they knew what we were looking for and what types of backgrounds that they should be looking at. So I think an exercise like Referral Madness, it's not just looking for anybody you know. It's on the talent team to also be able to walk through their employees, let them know what are open roles. A lot of the times, somebody in sales has no idea what engineering is hiring or vice versa. So we need to educate the team as well.
It's all kind of in the interest of making it as easy as possible for someone to refer a candidate.
Yeah, and we are in a unique position because we are a recruiting company, but at other companies, a lot of people are not involved in recruiting the way our company is. And we want to and talent teams should try to make it as easy as possible for the employees to be able to refer people and be as involved in recruiting.
Britt, is this campaign, is this similar to sort of referral campaigns you've seen elsewhere?
Yeah. I mean, I think that they did an outstanding job, and I liked how people were tagged. I think, most ATSs nowadays and track as well, you can tag people. And that's really helpful not only for in the moment, but then when you also want to think about, let's go back and revisit some of the referrals and see where they are. So I think you want a referral to be sort of a living, breathing thing as they are human, but also how are you keeping in touch with these people and how are you thinking about them? As a company our size, we may not have the right role for that person in the moment, but how do we stay in touch with them and how do we cultivate a relationship with them for when the time is right? So by using tagging, I think that that's a really impactful way to keep track of people.
Were there a few cases of that, of referrals that aren't ready now, but like you're cultivating that relationship with?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a lot of ways that we work to stay in touch with people. One really interesting one, which just took place last week, again, not something, in a year from now, I'll have some of my own personally branded ideas, but we do a ramen lunch.
Tune in December 2017.
That's right. But I am a huge fan of this. So our engineering team hosts a ramen lunch, and this could be for people who have been referred, people that we've been talking to and having coffee with that aren't necessarily ready to make a job move, but are what I would consider a friend of Entelo. And so we have a quarterly lunch as a touch point for them to hear what's going on with the company, hear what's going on in the space, here's what's going on in the industry. So it's not just focused on what Entelo's doing, but just best practices that we're seeing with coding in a certain language or...
And it's like a no pressure. They don't have to worry about getting followed up with and being hounded if they're not ready. It's just kind of like come, have some lunch, learn about the space a little bit, like a community aspect.
Yep.
So we haven't really talked about the long-term relationship on this podcast. A little bit we have. Dan Portillo talked about he had been recruiting someone for 10 years. So when you find someone who's not quite ready, the timing isn't right for whatever reason. Let's say you try to recruit me, Britt, and I say, hey, love your company. You're super cool. Love what you guys are working on. I'm happy where I am right now, and I'm not looking to move. What's your next move?
I would set up a reminder so that something will notify me in 6 months, 8 months, 12 months. What's going on with you? Hey, just wanted to reach out. How are you doing? I think the holidays are a great time. Some of the things that we were just talking about today in a meeting with one of our engineers was we should send a note to all of the people who were referred this year, just saying happy holidays. We wish you all the best. And it's really easy for us to pull that information out of our ATS because not only might they be tagged from a particular incentive, but they're also tagged as coming in as a referral. So just things that you can do, again, that aren't focused on, hey, I've got a job. Do you need a job?
Right.
But hi, remember us. We're here, we're thriving and doing well, and we just want to wish you all the best.
It's timely right now. The holidays are a great excuse to reach out to someone in like a a no ulterior motive type of fashion, right?
Yep.
But there is an ulterior motive.
Entelo also, of course. I also feel like I've noticed that we do a lot of events here, which is pretty cool. So that's how I've tried to stay in touch with people as well, is just inviting them to some of the events. We had a women's event a couple of months ago, and it was a really amazing event, and I invited some of my candidates that I've been speaking with. I actually have a candidate that I had lunch with last week that reminded me. I have a reminder to reach out to her every 6 weeks, and now we've kind of become friends. So we get lunch and we get coffee, and she's keeping me posted on where she's at, and she knows that whenever she's ready to make a move, we'll be the first one that she speaks with.
So it's more about like you kind of have to just sense someone's need, and maybe even if you're not planning, my next follow-up, I'll include this little thing about what our company is doing, like help persuade them. It's just like becoming someone that they trust and that they know you're interested in. So like for example, if God forbid I was ever to leave Entelo, like what would I do? Gasps. I would go to all the recruiters that had hit me up, or the good ones anyway.
I also think, and I've heard from a lot of people who are not in recruiting, that recruiters can be viewed as like vultures and that they're just after you and that's their only motive. So if you can make them feel like, hey, I actually want to get to know you as a genuine person. If it's not a fit here, I can help you find a fit somewhere else. I have a lot of connections as well, and that to me has been really helpful because I do want to build that type of relationship.
Have either of you done that in your career, referred a candidate who like to another company, to another recruiter?
Absolutely. And I do it also with people who I know. Like, I've moved around to different companies, and I'll reach out to recruiters I've worked with in the past and say, hey, do you have any bridesmaids? Meaning, like, do you have any runner-up candidates that you thought were really great who didn't get hired? So
I love that.
Yeah.
That's an awesome.
Yeah, but honestly, I did have somebody who was referred to Entelo by a recruiter from another company who said, hey, this guy was great. We didn't hire him. You should reach out. Unfortunately, by the time I reached out to him in this hot market, he'd already taken something. But I think that there's always an opportunity. And I love doing that for people, too, that if I talk to them and they're not right, like, let me share my network with you. How can I put you in touch with someone?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that just sort of community exists, I guess, right? Like, so you're always kind of, you know that if you refer someone, if you have a bridesmaid that you pass along, you might get one back down the line.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's, I think with recruiting, I always think of it as being a community of best practices. So really with anything you're doing, whether it's your career page or your ATS, so much of the knowledge that I've acquired over the years has really been sort of peer-to-peer. Hey, what are you guys doing with your ATS? What do you like? What do you not like? We need something new. So it's a lot of the influence that I've had over the years on decisions that I've made have been based on what my peers are saying and doing.
Definitely.
We actually hired your boss through a referral. That was through a referral of an agency.
Really?
So we were working with Wave Staff, who's amazing, by the way. If anyone wants to hire awesome salespeople, definitely should use Wave Staff. But I told her that we don't have agency budget for marketing and that we can't partner with her for this role. And she sent Sid over to me and she said, you know what? I've had such an amazing experience working with Entelo and I believe in good karma and I think he would be a really good fit for you. And I'm going to give this one to you just because I think you should talk to him. And we ended up hiring him, which was pretty awesome. And then I, in turn, referred her to a company who is now using her. So what goes around comes around.
Yeah. Quid pro quo.
Yeah.
Do we cover long-term relationships thoroughly? Was there anything else more you guys have to say on that? We talked about like the catch-up cadence, like the, no ulterior motive, wink, wink, nudge, nudge aspect of it, the give a candidate, get a candidate program. All right. I feel like, we covered those.
I think, too, when you talk about not or sort of being subtle in terms of things that you're delivering. Some of the things that I've been looking at here in Entelo are like, we need a signature that in my email signature drives people to our career page, to Glassdoor, to see what's happening, where they might be able to get pressed, drives them to our blog. Like, I think that there's opportunities to provide people with content in a more subtle way that if you're checking in with them, they also realize like, oh, hey, you guys are a best of whatever, and I want to check this out and see it. So I think that's an important thing, too, that we need to do.
Clever. You recruiters are sneaky bunch. There's all this stuff I didn't know that went on behind the curtain. I love it. Amina, earlier I was eavesdropping on you. You were on a phone screen. Amina sits right behind me now, podcast land, so I get to hear firsthand what her in action, which is awesome, and vice versa. She gets to hear me goof off and say that I don't know what the numbers are. But phone screen, you're wanting to make sure that they're not like a psychopath, that they can like articulate themselves, and they're kind and they're inquisitive, they're prepared, they're like their background matches the background you had anticipated. But then they start throwing at you like, what are your plans for, like, what are your product roadmap? Like, what are all these technical questions? How do you kind of direct that conversation so that it stays in the realm of what you need for it to be productive?
Well, first off, our engineering team is very accessible, so I'm really lucky for that. I'm literally, as I'm on a screen, slacking our VP of engineering and asking him questions that candidates are asking me, and he's very responsive, so I feel lucky, and that's an opportunity for me to continue to learn every single day. What my goal really is also is to be able to understand what the candidate's looking for, what's their motivators, what's going to help them be successful in this role. Because in my role, I have two client groups. I have my candidates and I also have my internal teams that I'm working with. So I need to help not only the candidate be successful in their interview process, but also the hiring manager with the candidate. So I want to make sure that I'm getting all of the necessary information for the hiring manager before they speak with them. So what are their motivators? What are they really looking for, so that we have the selling points? For every person, it might be a little bit different. Maybe somebody wants to really, really make an impact. Maybe somebody wants to grow into a team lead role. Maybe somebody wants to work on a completely different challenge and learn a totally different language. It really just depends. And it's my job to be able to figure all of that out so I can package it up for the hiring manager.
And then at some point you ask them, do you have any questions for me?
Yep.
Which is equal parts giving them the information they need, but that's like an interview question in itself, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, in my opinion, if you're having any sort of conversation, you should have some questions prepared. And I always like to see what types of questions they're asking, what's really important to them. That shows what's important to them as well. Is their product roadmap important to them? Is the culture really important to them? Is management really important to them? All of these questions are really important, and that's my way of figuring out what kind of candidate they will be and how can I help the hiring manager be successful in their conversations with them.
That's a good answer. Can I make your champagne cold?
Yes.
Britt, what do you want to talk about? What are you working on? What's what did you do today?
What
did you accomplish?
Let's see. I sat around and I drank champagne.
Yep, clicked through the photos.
Well, so one of the fun things of my job, I actually went to lunch today with a customer to talk to them about Entelo as a recruiter.
Cool. What did you learn?
Which I thought was really, really cool. So one of the things that I thought was so interesting about our product that I shared with them is the track behind it. So this customer didn't realize that when you send an email through track and this is a potential customer, I should say, but they didn't realize all of the back end that happens. So you can see when somebody opens an email, when somebody clicks on something in the email, when somebody responds, so that you can really sort of track your success. And so it was just really interesting to have a conversation with another recruiting leader about, and I always do this anyway, but we always talk about what products are you using? Where are you in the marketplace? Some of the other stuff that I talked with her about was metrics, and how metrics driven is your company versus my company, and how do you tell if an engineering recruiter is successful? And so it's always interesting to have those conversations. And again, it's more of that peer-to-peer sharing. So
I have a question for you.
Ask away.
How do you tell if an engineering recruiter is successful?
I was literally going to ask that. Tell me.
I wish that I could say that there's a great formula. So I spoke to somebody from Fitbit last week who said to me, well, we find that if our sourcers source up to 8 people in a quarter that go to offer, that equates to a successful sourcer. And if we have a recruiter who has 1 to 3 offer accepts with people actually showing up on day one, that's successful. And that kind of blew my mind, because there is so much work that goes into it. But if somebody's getting 3 offers in a 1-month period of time based on having all of this sourcing done for them, so you sort of figure you're working as a pod and a team, that's just an indication of how hot the market is. So
Okay.
the other person I met with today works for Riverbed, and she said 1 to 3 hires a quarter is kind of what they look at. So if you're doing full life cycle as a recruiter. So I can't say that there's any one company that sort of found the holy grail on metrics and reporting in terms of, what the top of your funnel looks like in order to get to that hire, particularly in engineering. It's just, there are still so many things that kind of get down to the wire on whether they're going to marry you or jump in bed with the bridesmaid.
Exactly. So, everyone's funnel is different, right? And depends on the company you're working at. Some people work at companies that everyone wants to work at. I imagine your life there as a sourcer might be a little bit easier. So I guess, how do you benchmark then? How do you compare yourself across the board? You want to be meeting with peers and learning best practices, but how do you kind of normalize and figure out, all right, even though this works for them, might not work for me, this is what I can learn from it?
So I think that the biggest thing is that you need to look at your history. So for a company like Entelo, certainly we're doing a huge push right now for hiring and engineering. And we'll need to look at the end of the quarter and say, how much outreach how much inbound did we do? How much outreach did we do? And then how did that sort of trickle down to outreach coming back to people who have responded, then going down to who came in for a tech screen, who came in for an on-site, and who was hired. I think at Entelo, we've found that if we have about 4 to 5 on-sites that we'll get a hire out of that, and those are people who have actually passed the tech screen. So that's really sort of the proof is in the pudding, and the tech screen usually weeds people out.
Right.
But I think the amount of energy that goes into getting 4 people to on-sites can take, for us, having started with a cold pipeline, we are now 6, maybe 7 weeks in, and we're just at a point now where we have a consistent number of on-sites. I think we have 4 scheduled for this week. So
Yeah, we are 4 out of 5 so far. We're still pending one more, but 4 out of 5 candidates that we had are all being pushed forward, which is exciting.
Well done.
Yeah, very exciting.
So correct me if I'm wrong. It feels a little bit harsh to judge a sourcer based on offers, because at a certain point it's out of their hands, right? Their job is to build quality pipeline, and if they're bringing people in and they're getting past first round, second round, right? That's not that's good, right? If you're listing someone and they get invited back, that's a good candidate, right? So then if they're not taking an offer for whatever reason, if they make it to the final stage and then the answer is no on the company side, can you punish your sourcer for that? Is that fair?
Oh, no. And so I think that's the person does get the offer, right? So that's their metrics are this person gets an offer, and then the recruiter is based on whether or not that offer successfully. Even
before that, even if they make it to the last stage and there's no offer, right?
Yeah. So that's the same as having a funnel, right? So you want to say we expect you to get so many
at this level
on-site, so many face-to-faces. But I think the bigger the company, the more flow that you're going to have. And so I would never say to a sourcer at Entelo, you should have 8 offers. But that's just based on the size of our company, how how expansive our employment brand is, kind of as you had said earlier. I don't think that, they're really big companies, and just because of their brand, they're getting thousands of inbound applicants.
Right.
They're also hiring a lot of people from university, and they're hiring people who are past interns, and less mature companies really struggle with some of those things.
The idea that the sourcer is finding candidates so good that they're getting offers, even though that the offer is so much of that is past their stage in the interviewing cycle.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Do you think that's fair? Is that your way of looking at it as well?
In this particular instance, I understand the methodology that went into calculating that. I like to really look at sourcing like a sales funnel. So I always think about honestly, if I could take my sourcer and keep them in something like Salesforce, where I could see how many outreaches did you do, how many phone calls did you do, how many follow-ups did you have, how does that funnel keep moving? Because ultimately, if you're a company that has a sourcing model, the sourcers never get turned off. They are completely and totally not impacted by peaks and valleys in hiring and what's hot and what's not. There are certain areas where they should say, I'm always going to be filling a pipeline with this. So in engineering, for us, it would be Ruby. In sales, it might be, I'm always going to have a pipeline for, SDRs and account executives. And so there are other roles that might be more unique in a group, but those big buckets are always going to have people coming through them. And that's more how I like to look at sourcing. What's interesting, I think, from how people are measured is that the more people that I talk to, at smaller companies at least, seem to be less metrics driven in terms of that outreach and more about what are you producing at the end of the day? Like, I want to know what the end result is and not what goes into the sausage making.
Do you want to hire a sourcer for Entelo?
Yes.
For me?
Well, are you going to keep doing engineering recruiting? But yeah, I think at a company this size, one of the things that I always say, and I've shared this with Amina, is that, and I don't think it's exclusive to recruiting, but if you come on board, you need to be a jack of all trades. And Amina's done an outstanding job of showing that. She came in, she recruited for sales. That was where she had experience. And then the tables turned and it was, hey, we need you to recruit engineers. And she did not skip a beat. She figured it out. She asked lots of questions and she got to work. And that would be my same expectation of anybody who came onto the recruiting team, whether they were a recruiter or a sourcer, is just, I'm a team player and I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to do the best I can.
If you would like to work for Britt and work for Entelo and be my best friend and make cameo appearances on the podcast, go to entelo.com/careers and maybe we'll work something out. I'm curious, like on the note of Entelo, and I do try and stay away from the product because it's not what this is about, but did the customer you met with have any feedback on, I wish Entelo did this, or it would be cool if they did this? I'm trying to seek out what our recruiter needs that could be served by technology.
Yeah. So it was interesting. I think of the other products that they're looking at, because there is competition in the marketplace. What they really liked was the track product. There is no one else who is coming even close to Entelo in terms of track. And that kind of an interesting story, which I've shared with several people now, but I had a recruiter on my team at my last job, and we had a limited budget for LinkedIn Recruiter. And we had brought an additional person onto the team. And so I went into LinkedIn Recruiter and I said, whoever uses it the least is going to lose it. And I went to this recruiter on my team and I said, you're an outstanding recruiter. You fill jobs, your candidates love you, your clients love you. You're not using LinkedIn Recruiter. And he looked at me and he said, I can't live without this. I log in every day. I need it. And I said, well, I know you're logging in, but you're not sending any in-mails. And that's what we're paying $8,000 a year for.
Right.
And so 24 hours went by and he came back and he said, I now know why you think that I'm not using Recruiter, and it's because I'm using the Connectifier product. So he was sending emails, but they were going through his Outlook, and I had no way as a manager to know that he was getting, any use out of the product. So,
or even monitoring activity.
Exactly, right? Like I had no idea what was happening outside of the fact that he was in there looking at profiles, and that's
right.
kind of where it ended. And it was really interesting for us because at Lithium Technologies, where I used to work, we then started to look at Entelo as a solution for that. Because I want to know as a manager, like, where am I getting value out of my investments? What's the ROI, whether it's my ATS or some marketing tools or employee branding, that's all going to go into my cost per hire. So I want to make sure that I'm spending my money in the right places.
Was that similar to what this customer told you? Like they're able to monitor their team more accurately?
Yeah, that Entelo was, for them, of what they've seen, the most sophisticated in terms of being able to provide feedback. And they even said, like, and I feel the same way when I open Entelo. Like, I love I get all these messages. So-and-so clicked on your email. So-and-so opened it, So to have that instant feedback is also really gratifying.
So I'm curious, Britt, you've been here for a couple months now, and now that you've got the lay of the land, do you have any like pie in the sky projects, like big things on the talent team that you'd like to see us doing, I don't know, medium term, 6 months, a year down the line?
Yes. Yeah. So definitely keep an eye out for a new careers page. It's high time for us to be updating our content there. So I will come back to you and let you know when we are ready to reveal that. So that's a big one for us right now. I think as we go into 2017, we're doing a lot of introspection. So looking at what our value proposition is as an employer, and working with Margaret on our team with that, to spend time interviewing our leadership team to understand what it is that they love about Entelo, what they see in the top performers at Entelo, and sort of what's in their DNA, and then going and interviewing people throughout the company. And that it's really important. And this is where, whether it's recruiting or HR or people, what we do is so interwoven. I don't think that recruiting ends when somebody shows up, because we want to make sure that when we do make good decisions and we do hire people who are top performers, who are part of the fabric at Entelo, that we're continuing to find like-minded people. And one of the things I love about Entelo is that we always talk about culture add as opposed to culture fit. So this is really more around how are we quantifying that, and how are we making sure that we have the right tools in place to interview successfully to make these hires. So we're doing that. We're spending some time. Also, I'm a big fan of the calendar. So one of the things that we've also talked about as a team is, where do we get value from the things that we are doing out in the marketplace, whether it's something focused on diversity or something focused on university or on interns, or you name it. There is so much opportunity out there to go to meetups, to go to conferences. And I like to think of us as being impactful. So I want to look at buckets narrowly and fill the buckets up, as opposed to being sort of that peanut butter spread of, wow, we've been to a lot of things, but where did Entelo end up at the end of the day? Did our brand recognition increase? Did our candidate flow increase? Did our quality of hire or time to fill increase? Those are the things to me that are going to say, wow, that was money really well spent, as opposed to, that's a great event for marketing to be at, or that's something that sales should be involved at. So we're also spending time, we're looking at marketing's calendar to say, what should recruiting be a part of, and then incorporating that with what types of meetups should we be doing, what types of events should we be hosting, what types of things should we be drawing marketing into to say, hey, we'd love to have a partner in this. So those are all things that I'm really excited about us doing right now.
Some kind of long-term trend analysis, using that to make decisions. Yeah, I think there's this tendency, especially for young companies, to, I know I'm guilty of this, to just kind of like, oh, we need to be going to meetups, we need to be going to conferences, let's go to this one. And then you need to have the rigor, though, to like measure it and then let that drive the next year. So like, that's what I'm working on right now is, all right, 2017, what live events are we going to do? We have to look back and see which ones we did, how those went, and then like which ones we didn't do, why didn't we, like making all those recommendations. So I think across the board we're trying to get a little more rigorous.
That's exactly it. And that's I actually was having some banter back and forth with John, our CEO, and Cole, our head of engineering, around growing diversity in the engineering organization. And there was a recent article that he shared about how do we increase diversity within engineering at this company. And what this article was really saying is the best, most impactful thing that you can do is start hiring engineers out of college. And that's not something that we've done as a company. And my push was really around, let's talk about this for 2017 now, so that we have a plan to be on campus in the fall, so that we have a plan to have interns and university hires in 2018. And I think that's really the difference of planning versus saying, yeah, we should get college grads. Like, who's holding a college fair?
Right.
If we're going to go to universities locally, let's be really thoughtful about it and think about, what is this going to cost us, and what's our end goal? Why are we going here? Who's alumni that we have here? What other companies out there have success, and kind of go through a whole plan around it, so that when you show up, you feel like you're not just handing out T-shirts and tchotchkes, but that you're actually meeting people, making a connection with them, understanding what they're looking for, and how you're evangelizing Entelo and seeing that match. And then on the back end, it also gives us time to think about what a structured program would look like here and who's going to lead that, because there has to be a manager in the engineering organization that wants to embrace and develop this young talent and see them flourish here. So there's more that goes into it than a knee-jerk reaction.
Of course. Well, as we approach optimal podcast length here, we've covered a lot of territory. We covered referral madness. We covered long-term relationships. We covered recruiting bridesmaids. You know, those silver medalists, they're still on the podium. That's still impressive. And a whole host of other things, pie in the sky ideas, long-term rigor around data analysis and trends. Also, what else we cover? Phone screens. Whole bevy of things here on the centennial edition of Hiring on All Cylinders. I'd like to thank you, Podcast Land, for sticking with us this long. If you are just joining us, if you're new to the show, go back and listen to 99 episodes. They're awesome. There's lots of amazing material. Thank you, Britt. Thank you, Amina. This has been awesome. All you out there in Podcast Land, have a spectacular week and happy hunting.